Good afternoon and welcome back to another ironic introduction to another video. Today I'm going over the back issues number 6 contamination post from Kabam. As always, there's a link to the forum in the description below if you'd rather read through it yourself, as well as timestamps for when I go over rewards and whenever I go over the nodes and stuff, because we have that information. Finally. So that said, I'm going to jump straight to the rewards because I think that's the most important part, and I want to start doing rewards first so people don't have to jump ahead as often. Classic difficulty has some stuff, but honestly, we're pretty much just doing this for variant difficulty. We're looking at 3 5-star rank 2 to 3 gems, 3 5-star rank 3 to 4 gems, 2015, 2016, and I love seeing that 2017 added there. Absolutely awesome. It adds way more value to these crystals. 5-star rank 4 to 5 gem crystal. Wish it was a generic. 5-star awakening gem crystal. 5-star crystal shards. 25,000 5-star crystal shards, so pretty solid there. Tier 5 basic catalysts 3, a 25% tier 5 CC, 5,000 6-star crystal shards, and a good chunk of 5-star signature stones. So overall, my comments here is pretty good. I don't expect variant level content to be all about the 6 stars, even though that's what I want. Personally, I think that the variants are a really good way for Kabam to bridge kind of a gap and really try to target somewhere in the middle. So this is awesome. We're still getting half a 6-star, which is a pretty dang good amount for variant content, especially at this point. And we're getting 2.5 5-stars, which is solid, or 1 2/3 of a featured if that's what you're rolling for. I love seeing that the tier 5 basic is generic here. And that it's 3, because it's a really good amount of tier 5 basic, but I will point out that while we're getting tier 5 basics, we're not getting tier 2 alpha, and that's a really big miss. Like, I'd almost rather get 3, well, no, 3 tier 5 basic is a lot, but I'd like to see some tier 2 alpha in here at some point, or some way, shape, or form, so that's kind of a huge miss that just needs to be acknowledged. But I don't think that detracts too much from like the overall solid rewards here. I love seeing the 25% tier 5 CC, and I know a lot of people like the larger quantities here, but I'm personally a huge advocate for smaller quantities, more crystals. Larger quantity crystals means more RNG. If you're fishing for a specific class, you are significantly less likely to get it. So, it's hit or miss. It really depends on what kind of player you are or how you're looking at your resources. But I would have liked to see, like, I don't know, 13 2% here, or like 5% and then 10 2%. I really like the 2% for forming crystals. It adds up a lot better and really normalizes the curve a lot better as far as tier 5 CC frag hunting. But it is what it is. There's definitely benefits to a 25%, and this is a solid amount in a variant content, so I'm down for that. 48 6 stones isn't the most, but we get a lot more 6 stones these days just from like the 22-hour events, so I don't really have an issue there. 4 million gold is solid. And then finally, just over the awakening gems, I want to comment that I love that they have the 2017, but actually, weirdly enough, the 2015 and the 2016 gems are slowly increasing in value as Kabam makes and buffs and reworks champions that used to be like memes, champions you never really use. But as those champions start seeing even like niche usage or for fun usage at all, just like relevance in the content of the contest, I really like seeing this, and these become so much more valuable, especially if you're willing to wait and specifically rank up targeted champions. Absolutely love that. So rewards, pretty good. I wasn't really expecting anything different than this. I'm not surprised at all, so I'm not like crazy hyped, just because like this is exactly what we are expecting from variant content, except for maybe the lack of tier 2 alpha. That sucks. As far as the variant itself, this is launching on December 16th, so that is this Wednesday. Can't wait for that. Lots of content this month. Again, they have the classic and the variant difficulty. The new global buffs for this will limit the power of champions who aren't tagged as #villain. So you're not limited to only #villain, but it's definitely going to be encouraged that you bring #villain. I like that. As well as, they want you to understand that you'll be activating like Furies, Armor Breaks, Unstoppable buffs, etc. So here, I'm going to go over the buffs just kind of one at a time. It'll be a little bit slower. But buff buff timestamp if you're interested in the nodes. So Black ISO Resonance. Corrupt ISO energy radiates from the earth. Attacking champions are immune to all damage and receive 100% bonus attack, but will be KO'd after 20 seconds via an unavoidable degen. Hashtag villain champions ignore these effects. So I think this is incredibly important. Now, I don't know if this means that by bringing a non-villain, that maybe you can like use a 20-second burst champion for some of these fights, or maybe it's that a hashtag villain only avoids the degen. So I'll have to see how that works out. But in their own way, Kabam is essentially saying, you know, bring a villain. I do have questions on whether or not invulnerability will work here, whether or not Spider Ham's 100% degeneration resistance will work here, whether or not Namor and like really good timing will work here. I have questions, but unfortunately we don't have answers. Hashtag Malevolence is all non-hashtag villain attackers are unable to gain power, and Malignance is all non-hashtag villain attackers are unable to heal through any means. So even though they aren't explicitly preventing you from bringing villains, they are saying you're using the villains as attacks. That's fine. I think my biggest issue with the variant 5 was even if they like made it so you couldn't utilize a champion, you couldn't even use them for synergies. So at least these villains will still have access to synergies, which is something. It's still pretty limited in roster, and I'll pull up Aunt May in a moment to show kind of like what that means. Let me do that now, actually. Because that does have, you know, lasting implications on what like actual villains are, but it's a solid roster of villains. There's definitely a lot of access here, and it really depends on where they push the nodes from there. Additionally, there will be a few of the following buffs will be found throughout each quest and on boss fights. So first up is Mastermind. Hashtag villain attackers increase the duration of bleed, incinerate, and shock debuffs on their opponents by 100%. That's a solid bonus. You know, looking at the villains, you've got things like Carnage probably going to pop up there. Doom Shock being longer is nice to a degree, depending on how that interaction is working. It's tough for me to really pull out other options here, like Venom. I'm sure Red Goblin will show up here. So a lot of really good examples. It would have been nice to have that also impact Poison, just because of Immortal Abomination, but maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe it's for the targeted nodes. Next is Henchmen. When triggering a Fury buff, hashtag villain attackers will passively purify all debuffs. So that's pretty cool, especially depending on how they do the nodes. Like if they have one where you gain the one where you gain Fury buff, I think it's called Rising Fury, and they pair that maybe with like Biohazard or with like what's it called, Freezer Burn. That would be a really cool way to make all hashtag villains work against that node, while, you know, still having mechanics there to worry about. Next is Monster. When triggering an unstoppable or unblockable buff or passive, hashtag villain attackers will grant themselves a non-stacking passive regeneration, granting 10% of their max health over 5 seconds. Wow, that actually sounds really solid. Definitely going to see how that works, but that could be really, really game-changing for some of these villains, depending on how they place that node. Beast, activating an unstoppable or unblockable buff or passive on an attacking hashtag villain champion reverses the defender's healing for 5 seconds. So this is solid. Both of these, the first thing that comes to mind for me is Ghost plus Wasp synergy. I'm sure there are other things here. I'm sure there's a lot of other things here, but that is by far the first thing that comes to mind for me. For a Genius, while under the effect of an armor up buff, an attacking hashtag villain champions burns 10% of the defender's max power on hit or when blocked. Wow, it's a really good way to really mitigate power gain. It's going to be really cool. Madness, when triggering an armor break debuff, hashtag villain attackers will also apply a passive power lock to the defender, which will last until the last armor break ends. I think Magneto is the first one that comes to mind there. King Groot might be really good. Whew! These nodes looking spicy. Finally, the last two are Overlord and Tyrant. For Overlord, when a defender's buffs are nullified, hashtag villain attackers gain a permanent plus 10% precision passive to a max of 10. That's neat, not super cool. And then hashtag villain attackers cost 50% of their attack as bonus energy damage each time they hit their opponent or their block, as long as the defender suffers from a weakness debuff. Apocalypse is the first one that comes to mind here, but this might be really good for people who run Resonate Mastery. Like, depending on how they stack up that lane, this might be like an instance in a variant where people are like, okay, it's time to unlock Resonate. So buffs look pretty neat. I'm pretty stoked to be running a villain variant. There's a lot of really, really powerful villains. So depending on how they stack the fights and how they set up the nodes, it could be really, really potentially cool. I'm interested in some of these interactions. I'm almost positive this unavoidable degen can't be, duped or confused with like Spider-Ham or Captain Marvel movies Invulnerability or Namor Passback, but it would be cool if it works. Definitely a lot of potential for some memeing going on there. But that said, as always, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about Variant 6, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.